Well, hey friends, it's Kevin with Better Bible Reading, and welcome to another Bible review, this time with the Wide Margin King James Version large print by Hendrickson Bibles. Now, before I get into the nitty-gritty of this particular Bible, hopefully you've been following along with this theme that I've been introducing this year, and that is to review Bibles for you that are based on my active reading approach for the year 2022, which essentially means Bibles that are great for writing in. So you've been seeing journaling Bibles. I just did an ESV Wide Margin Bible and my highlighting system for that Bible. So you might be asking, why another Wide Margin Bible? I spoke a little bit about this Bible very briefly at the beginning of the year, but I wanted to do an in-depth review to show you why this will be a good supplemental Wide Margin Bible to have alongside something like an ESV Wide Margin Bible. So this is a very basic Bible. You'll notice that it said large print, and that is really the thing that caught my attention. I bought this back in 2020 because it was very inexpensive. This, again, is the same theme in my other Bibles. This is not genuine leather, which could say something about its durability over the long haul, but it can also say something about how inexpensive it is. So this particular Bible, still, to my knowledge, is under $40, and I'll have a link for it in the description if you decide this is something you want to try out. But I was intrigued because my ESV Wide Margin is not large print. This one is, and it is a King James version instead of an ESV, so I thought I'll give it a try. So I bought this Bible, and I really do enjoy it. And I'm going to go to the very back of the Bible first, because this is a very basic Bible in terms of what it has and what it does not have. Now, if you open up the Bible, you're almost immediately into Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, so there's not really much of anything at the very front of it. And the same can be said after we get to the last page of Revelation. The last page of Revelation, as soon as it finishes, we're met with this little table of contents of what to expect throughout the rest of the Bible. And you can see there's not much here, but I think what it does have is really, really helpful. It has just an inclusion of some biblical promises. So this is almost like a thematic glossary. So you can look at things like how to deal with anxiety, and it has the biblical text to help you with that. And then I think after we get through these, what is one of the best features in this Bible, that is a harmony of the Gospels. Now, if you have something called a gospel harmony, it is normally a 4-column text of the 4 Gospels, going from the beginning to the end in chronological order. And anytime you have parallel accounts, like especially in Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you'll see those lined up, and then you'll often have John off to the side because John has some material that's exclusive to John, and sometimes it doesn't include things that the other 3 Gospels do. And this is kind of that, but it's boiled down into topical format instead of actually having like all of the text of the Gospels. But for example, if you want to look at the massacre of infants, you'll see that it's only in Matthew 2, but again, it tells you where it is. Or you go down to something like the cleansing of the temple, you can see that it's included in all 4 gospel accounts. This is really handy to kind of get your mind wrapped around what's in each gospel. And when you go to look at the source material, if you decide to use this, you can see how much additional information is included in one gospel over the other. All right, so that's what that is, the harmony of the Gospels, really helpful. And then we have a assessment of the miracles in the Old Testament and the New Testament. And again, these are really helpful because these are those kind of Bible knowledge things that we often know about, we often think about, or we might ask the question, though, well, where is the plagues of Egypt? What chapters do those occur? And you can see right here you have them laid out for you. And it goes all the way from the beginning, creation in Genesis 1, through the New Testament as well. And I just find this to be really helpful. Again, you can see this type of thing where you want to know what parables are in the New Testament and where to find them. It lists those for you as well. So this is really helpful. And then one other thing that I think is pretty impressive is over 100-page long concordance. The concordance starts on page really 1499, and it goes all the way through to basically the end of this Bible, to page 1622. So that's very long. It's almost 123 pages or so of a concordance. So pretty good for what you would get in a Bible. And it seems to be, because this is large print, is probably one of the reasons why it's a little bit longer in terms of page length. But again, because it's so readable because of the large print, it really is helpful. And then last, we have the only color maps, the only maps actually for that matter, in this entire Bible. But I think they're really well done. I mean, they're just basic maps, but the quality seems to be pretty good. You can definitely see what it is you're looking at. And that's the end of the Bible. So that is all it has in terms of additional features besides the text itself. But now let's actually get into what I think is a very good wide margin Bible. So here is an example of what you would see. And right off the bat, I would say that this Bible is impressive because the wide margins are not any less than what you have in the ESV Bible, which is what I reviewed last time. In terms of the margin size, you have about the same thing, but I think what this Bible does have, because it's a larger Bible, is you have much more margin in the top portion and even some in the bottom, and that's really more than what you have in the ESV. So if maybe you have OCD and you don't want to do this, you don't want to write up top, but if you do want to write up top, you have plenty of room here, which just equates to overall on each page, you have much more room to write than you do on the ESV Wide Margin Bible. And again, that's really because of the size of the Bible. Now, this Bible, as you can see, it is thick compared to more of your traditional thin line Bible that's going to be just kind of the bare necessities, no wide margins or anything like that. However, it's still very much easy to carry. It is still way smaller than what you would have with any size study Bible. So even though it's large print, you got to know that the Bible itself, in terms of dimensions, is going to be larger to deal with that feature of large print. It's still very accessible and it's very portable. So it is, I think, really well done in that regard. What you can also see in this Bible, what I think is one of the best features, is the way that the cross-reference system works. The cross-reference system in this Bible is very different from what I have in any of my other Bibles, because, like, for example, going back to the ESV wide margin, by way of comparison, at the bottom of each page you have a little block, or almost like a grid at the very bottom. And throughout the text, you have your cross-references called out with the very small lowercase letters or footnotes with a 1 or a 2 or a 3. And then you have a little grid at the bottom explaining them, or a footnote dealt with at the very bottom of the text. This Bible is not like that. Instead, any cross-references that are mentioned in any particular verse is given to you at the end of every verse. So, for example, chapter 12, verse 2, you can see that the footnote includes 1 Samuel 8:1, and then verse 5 and verse 20. I think that's really helpful because you don't have to be bouncing around back and forth trying to follow your lowercase t over here to a grid at the bottom. It just is a little disorienting to do that kind of thing. I don't know why every Bible doesn't have something like this, because this just makes it so much easier. Let's go to the New Testament and see how this would play out in something like a verse citation. So the very beginning of Matthew, we might see a citation. Verse 23, "Behold, a virgin shall be with child and shall bring forth a son, and they shall call his name Emmanuel," which is being interpreted, God with us. Now you can see the note there, Isaiah 7:14, 9, 6 through 7, and then again Matthew 28:20. So it has a cross-reference for both New Testament and Old Testament relevance. The only thing that I don't like about that is that it doesn't say cited. That's one feature that the ESV Wide Margin Bible has in their cross-reference system. And that's helpful because if you don't know the difference between a text being alluded to versus a direct quotation, then you're going to be left not knowing whether or not it's just a relevant verse or it's a direct quotation. In this case, Isaiah is being directly cited here, but you don't have anything that says cited. You just have Isaiah 7:14, 9 through 7, and Matthew. Obviously, Matthew 28:20 is not being cited in Matthew chapter 1, but it's included right alongside Isaiah. So you have to kind of know the difference between which is a relevant cross-reference and which is a citation from the Old Testament. Or if you're in the Old Testament, what New Testament chapter, verse, book is citing that. So that's maybe a downside, but still it's a small price to pay for having the cross-references included by every verse. Now, another feature that's really helpful in this Bible that is not the case in the ESV Wide Margin Bible is the fact that every verse is followed one after another. It's not in paragraph form, in other words. And that's really helpful if you're using this for teaching or preaching. You can automatically see the beginning of each subsequent verse, and that makes for easy readability, whereas a Bible like the ESV Wide Margin, even though it is given to us in two-column text like this, it is still written in paragraph form to where you have verses overlapping between paragraphs. You don't have that here. You just have one by one verse, and that's, I think, really makes for better reading. You can see some of my highlighting work that I've done in here, but really I've not used this Bible as much. I'll skip over to a book that I have been dealing with, and that is Galatians. I've been trying to use this Bible slow and steady as compared to my ESV because I'm using my ESV as my main Bible. This is kind of a supplemental Wide Margin Bible, and that really gets me to talking about why you would want to do this. As much as I love the ESV translation, I have not sold my soul to the ESV translation. It is very helpful to supplement not only the kind of Bible you have, but the kind of translation you have. And that is where something like a King James Version Bible is really helpful. Because when reading something that's in Old English, like the King James Version, you're forced to slow down, chew on each verse, chew on each word, each phrase, not only because the linguistic differences between more Old English versus today, but because it has more and more been the case that churches, denominations are moving away from the King James Version, and so it's not as much of a household translation as it used to be. Now, some people see that as a bad thing, some people see that as a good thing. I'm not saying whether or not it's a good or bad thing, but I am saying we should use that to our advantage in terms of a Bible that makes for good meditation, that makes for slow dealings through the text, being able to really think about what's being said and then make our notes and highlights. And a Wide Margin Bible is really a great way to be able to do that with something like the King James Version. So that was why I highly recommend this Bible to be used as a supplement to what you have in the ESV Bible. So, with that being said, get yourself a copy of this Wide Margin Bible published by Hendrickson Bibles. It is wide margin, but it's also large print. So if you're worried about how easily you can look at something and the eye fatigue, this is really the Bible to get because everything is very straightforward and it's beautifully done. The page quality, I think, is pretty good as well. It even seems to feel a little bit thicker than what you get in the ESV Wide Margin. So pick this up. It's very inexpensive. Again, I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in that. I'll have some more Bible reviews for you in the near future because these seem to be really helpful to those of you who've been watching so far. And I'll have some stuff in addition to Wide Margin Bibles, but I wanted to cover these just to give you some ideas of what you can do to promote active reading and good meditation on God's Word by writing your way through what you're reading. All right, this is Kevin with Better Bible Reading. Take care.